So now we're at the final part, chapter 5, how to make things happen. And I've got this chapter printed out in front of me. And I just want to go through a little bit because in reality, this part is down to you, okay? It's down to you to make things happen. Hopefully, I can give you some little pointers that can perhaps nudge you a little bit in order to make those things happen. Because as I mentioned actually in the text, one of the things I found most often with people is that there's often a gap. Something happens between the intention part or the planning part and the action part. And whilst, we can say, right, well, you've got to make a plan, you've got to have intentions, yeah. And within that intention part, you might list your long, medium and short-term goals. You might break that down and you might make daily tasks, for example. And, I'm somebody who's been guilty myself of making absolutely beautiful plans, and I will play around and spend a long time making a really nice plan, and it's great and I get really excited about it. And then, of course, comes the part where you realise that absolutely nothing's going to happen unless you actually take action and you do it. And quite often, this is the major point at which people really come unstuck. Okay, we have a lovely plan and then we sit there looking at it for days and sometimes weeks and sometimes months, and sometimes we never put the damn thing into action. And I would say that when people have come to me with challenges and they say to me they're stuck, it's this part at which people most get stuck. All right. So I did a bit of research many years back where I interviewed quite a lot of people, and people from different backgrounds, people who had sort of high-flying careers, people who had small businesses, people who were just starting out, people who've been doing it for a long time, people who were making life changes and that sort of thing. And this is the common thing that came up, and we often talked about, okay, well, what does it happen? What is it that happens when you get stuck at this place? And of course, it's at this point that, when we look back at the needs thing, and this is why it's quite important and the story thing, really it's a combination of your story and the needs thing, all right? Because depending on the story that you're telling yourself, that has a really big impact on how you're going to take action, when you're going to take action, and even whether you're going to take action at all, right? Because if your story is full of self-doubt and limiting beliefs and self-talk that isn't empowering, that's disempowering for you, then those things, if those things aren't sorted out, when you come to the end of your planning and you realise that you're going to have to do something, that's when all of those fears, those doubts, those questions, those beliefs are going to come out and haunt you, all right? And, that's often the bit. So quite often we think, well, why do I need to do this mindset thing? Why do I need to get my story straight? Why do I need to make sure these needs are met? What's that going to reveal to me? Well, when you get to the point where you're going to put this stuff into action, that's when you'll realise that the insights that you've gained from doing your story or looking at your story and the insights you've gained from looking at your essential needs are going to be really helpful to you. And, again, quite often, that's, as I say, that's the point at which a lot of people come and see me, because then we need to unpick some of the things that are causing their self-doubt, some of the things that are causing low self-worth, some of the things that are causing them to question, whether they believe in themselves or whether they believe that life is supporting them or whether life is out to get them. Okay, so it's totally reliant on mindset about how you're going to achieve these things. So I sort of set up a little exercise from this, and I simply said to people, right, well, just imagine for a minute, and this goes back to your kind of vision. And I don't know how long you've, set yourself, your vision into the future, but sometimes sometimes people are thinking like really long term, and sometimes people are thinking a bit more, close. So, and equally, as I said at the beginning, you might have a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, and a 12-month plan. It's really good to kind of break things down like that. But if you start from there, you start with the end in mind. That's a saying. I can't remember who it comes from. Is it Carlin or Zig Ziglar or somebody like that? I don't know. You start with the end in mind, all right? And what I want you to do is imagine yourself in that situation where you are living the vision that you've created for yourself. And then I simply want you to just imagine that we've caught up in a cafe. It's 10 years down the line. You might have been living your vision for 5 years by now. You might have settled into the life that is the point at which you've achieved the things that you want to achieve, that you've kind of envisioned in this plan. So we've met up and you said, oh, hi, Emma, long time no see, fancy catching up for coffee? I'm in your neck of the woods. And we meet up in the cafe and I say, wow, crikey, this is amazing. You sound like you've got an awesome life now. What on earth happened since I saw you last, right? And that's the point at which you're going to tell the story of how you got to where you are now, imagining that you are in the future doing your vision, all right, or being in the place where your vision resides, okay? And quite often what happens with this is that your mind, you're literally going to tell a story. You're going to essentially make up a story of how on earth you might have got from where you are now to where you want to go. But you're going to do it in reverse, as if it's already happened. And what this does, it opens up a kind of a space in your mind where you can kind of suspend disbelief for a little bit and go, yeah, okay, well, and you can almost do it as if you're imagining you're somebody else. Sometimes if you do have a lot of doubt, it can be easier to imagine somebody else doing your vision, all right? So whatever it takes for you to open up this part of your mind that frees your kind of creativity to come up with okay, well, if I was doing the thing that I really want to be doing, and I'm sitting there and I'm doing it, how on earth did I get there? So you're going to do that. And I say, okay, wow, what's happened to you? You're doing exactly what you're doing. Tell me what happened since we last met. That's exactly what you're going to do. All right. And it doesn't matter if you think you're making things up. All right. Because what this might do for you is to start to get you thinking in a slightly different way. It will, if you're starting from where you are now, you will be focused on, okay, whatever situation you're in. And I don't know what your current situation is. You might be pretty okay right now, but you might be in a really difficult place right now thinking, I can't see a way out. If you're starting from that place, it's really difficult to kind of make that plan forward, if you see what I mean, from a place where you can't see any way out. Hopefully some of these things have opened up your mind a little bit. But if you start from the place of, okay, let's assume that I've achieved it, and I'm absolutely sure you can, okay? I have absolute faith that when people apply themselves and when people do the things to deal with the obstructions and barriers, whether that's physical, practical, or emotional that get in the way, I'm absolutely sure you can achieve your vision, whatever it is, okay? It makes you have to think in a different way. Because you're almost imagining as if it was somebody else. How might somebody else get from A to B, or B and B, and travel from A to get there. All right, and as I say, it's a slightly inverted way of looking at things, but it will get you to start maybe unlocking and freeing up some of those things that kind of shut your mind down. Because if you are apprehensive or if you are doubtful, when we start thinking about our vision, it can cause fear, and that literally closes down the mind and or the thinking part of the brain, because your emotional brain takes over, and all of those difficult emotions come up where I'm not worthy, oh, nothing good ever happens to me, and I feel anxious because I really, it could be that you're needing to generate income for your business and you just don't know how, and you're really, really stuck. That's going to generate fear, and when your emotional brain takes over, your thinking brain goes offline, and that's why you can't think of different ideas. So if we're starting from a kind of creative position, and you're going to say, okay, this is how I got from A to B where I am now, all right? It opens up a slightly different avenue for you, and you might suddenly have an epiphany about different ways that you can do things, okay? So that's what you're going to actually do, and the process you're also going to learn about this thing, the cycle of transformation. Now there are various different models of change out there. This is essentially a change cycle. You might have come across one of the more famous ones by a couple of chaps called Prochaska and Di Clementi, and their model is often used in sort of addiction services, but it's also used in business as well, because the stages of change that there are apply across the board, whatever kind of change it is. And of course, if you're striving towards your vision, ultimately a change has to happen. Okay, you're changing your life, you're changing your circumstances. So what I've done here is put together what I call the cycle of transformation. I've called it various other things over the years, but and this is what I've learned both from my own experience of change, both from the different psychological models that are out there, and also working with people on this cycle. And I often think there are in between stages. So let's say the most famous one has 5 stages, but I actually think that there are things that happen in between those stages which are more subtle and which require a little bit more nudging forwards. So if we break those down into sort of conscious stages, I would say that we first become aware of the situation that needs changing. Now, all depends. The thing is, what you've got to understand is that change is inevitable. Change happens in life, whether you want it to or not. We simply cannot just sit there not changing. If you try and stop change, it's not going to happen. And if you try and stop things changing, your life is going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be painful, okay? So you might first become aware that there's a change that needs to be made. And I often do think about my own experience of stopping drinking alcohol many, many years ago. And there is no kind of timescale to these different stages happening. You could sit down and do the whole lot in a day, pretty much. Except when you get to the sustain stage, you're going to have to, in order to reach sustenance, you're going to have to do that for a period of time. It becomes natural. So you're going to become aware. And that's the point at which that there's some kind of change afoot, or that you make a decision to make a change, which kind of leads into the next bit, which can be simultaneous. And I've put willingness and decision in the same bracket because they kind of have to happen together, really. So you have to become willing to make that change. Okay, if you're not willing, it's not going to happen, or it's not going to happen effectively. And quite often when people are forced to make changes before they're ready, they're not successful. And that's why you really need to have that willingness, and you need to make a decision. And the word decision is really, really interesting. It's a very important word. It comes from the Latin for de, which means off, and cadere, which means cut or to kill, to cut or to kill. So you are literally cutting off all other options, or we say it's death to the other. Yeah. So when you make a decision, that's like a real proper commitment. You're saying, this is the thing I'm going to focus on, and that's what I'm doing. All right. So that willingness and that decision has to happen. Then you're going to make sure that you've taken ownership, right? Because this is your life, your change. There are majority of things in life, all the things in life that we have to do, we are responsible for. We have to take personal responsibility. So you're going to take ownership of that thing. This is my thing to change. Now, I might need to draw in some support to do that, but ultimately it's me that's going to have to do it. Okay. And if we have tried to sort of palm off responsibility onto other people during life, we'll find that we aren't moving forwards very, very successfully or very quickly at all. We get very stuck. The next thing is you're going to have to set an intention, okay? And within that, I won't go into the whole philosophy behind the notion of intention, but an intention is basically something that happens in the future. Okay, if you intend something, you're saying this, I'm setting this down and this is going to happen in the future, and that's basically it. And within that intention section, that's where you will make your plan. Okay, that might consist of certain goals. It will certainly consist of your writing down your vision, making sure you're clear on your vision. Pretty much many of the steps that we're doing here come into that intention section. Okay, then what I've done to help people out in between intention and action, because I knew there was a big gap there, is we've put rehearse. All right. And this means a lot of people, visualize themselves doing the thing. Okay. And we often find this in sports psychology. You will find that when footballers talk about taking a penalty, for example, they will have actually sat with their coach or their sports psychologist, whatever, and they will actually visualize themselves doing it. And there's a whole ton of research out there about how, about the way that our imagination works. And essentially, your body doesn't know the difference between what's real and imagined. That's why when you dream at night, if you dream that you're running, you will have a raised heartbeat. You may even find yourself panting as if you've been running, sweating. Your body physiologically reacts to reality in the same way that it does to imagination, okay? And that's why, for example, when people experience trauma in life, if they are asked to recount that trauma, they will then go back into that exact physiological state that they were in. And it's really important that we're careful when people are reliving those sorts of things. But we can use this to our advantage. And as I say, there are plenty of studies out there where you have people visualizing like lifting a weight with one arm for a number of weeks and actually lifting a weight with the other arm. So I think they give them 8 weeks to do certain exercise with one arm, actually doing it, and then they have to imagine doing it with the other arm. And what they discovered was that after the period of 8 weeks, the muscle mass built in the arm that actually lifted the weight is very similar to the muscle mass that's built by the arm that was imagined, if you see what I mean, that when you imagine lifting the weight. So that's how powerful the mind is. It's really important to get that on board. Your imagination is your most powerful resource. And I go into quite a lot of detail about the imagination in my work because this is the resource which can be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy. Okay, and we often say that worry is a misuse of imagination. Worry is basically you imagining something bad happening in the future, and that's why you have to knuckle your story, and that's why you have to knuckle getting your needs sorted out as well. Okay, because the way that you tell your story, it sort of triggers your imagination, and that's going to impact how well you process things, how well you take on board challenges and all of those sorts of things. So you're going to rehearse, and you're going to rehearse yourself doing your vision. Okay, and this exercise in this section is part of doing that. Okay, because when you imagine yourself, there's nothing woo-woo about this. Okay, it's all scientific. All right, it's everything that we know about the mind and psychology and various things that about the way that the mind works. If you imagine yourself doing it, you're going to set off those physiological responses in your body. You're going to start to feel the joy of doing that thing. Yeah. You're going to feel the excitement. You're going to feel the freedom. You're going to, sense the things around you. I used to spend a lot of time imagining myself walking on the beach. I could hear it. I could smell it. I could taste it, and being in that situation, it also compelled me to work towards that vision even more. It's very motivating. So you're going to rehearse yourself there. Sometimes, or depending on what it is, you can rehearse physically. Often people will practice. My son's got to go to an exam centre in a few weeks and do an exam. And I'm actually going to take him beforehand, and I'm going to show him around the centre, show him where he's going to take the exam, and then he can start to visualise. He'll be able to see himself going in there, so you might want to visit somewhere. I don't know what your plans are, but you might be able to do something physically rehearsal as well as the mental rehearsal as well. So then you're going to take action, all right? And this is the part that nobody else can do for you, yeah? We might be able to hold your hand while you do it, okay? We might be able to walk alongside you. We might be able to cheer you on. But you are going to have to take action, because if you don't take action, nothing's going to change, okay? Nothing's going to happen. You're not going to achieve your vision. And I've put it bluntly, right? There's no point in me gilding the lily here. I'm just telling you, unless you actually do it, it's not going to happen, all right? So after you've taken action, quite often some of the other change models have what we call a maintenance section. But maintenance, for me, I put in sustain, sustenance, because maintenance and sustenance are two different things. Maintenance requires you to keep doing something, okay? You keep tinkering on it. If you maintain a car, you have to keep working on it. You have to keep doing something, all right? When you are able to sustain something, it doesn't use up mental energy, emotional energy, physical energy, all right? Because when you sustain something, it becomes a natural, normal part of your everyday life. So you want to get somewhere, and often we find this when people want to lose weight. Constantly counting calories every day for the rest of your life is just not going to work, right? You're going to get exhausted doing that. You're going to get bored, fed up. It's going to be a real bane on your life. You find that it interferes with your ability to socialize well and all of these sorts of things. What you want to do is completely change your lifestyle, and for it to become normal that you don't have 4 sugars in your tea. Yeah. You don't have to keep counting them. You just do it. Same as what happened, when I stopped drinking alcohol. I literally don't have to do any work on not drinking alcohol anymore. I simply don't do it. It's a normal, natural part of my lifestyle. It doesn't occur to me. It doesn't use any mental energy, any emotional energy. I don't have to sit there writing things down anymore. It's just normal and natural for me. It's been nearly 12 years, all right? That's just how I live my life. It's a complete lifestyle change, and it's normal, right? And then we're going to get to the evaluate and reflect part. Now, it's where it is, because it can be at the beginning or it can be at the end, because maybe in order to become aware, you sat down and evaluated that something in your life isn't working. Yeah, and then you've also had to reflect on your life. That's why these two go together. When you evaluate something, you're kind of thinking, okay, I really need to take a look at this thing right now, because there's something not working for me in life or my business or whatever. You have to evaluate that. You have to, understand that something's not right. And then, what follows on is a natural process of reflection. After you've evaluated, well, something not quite right, it's not working quite well, then you have to reflect on, well, what is it? What is it? Let's look back over the last 5 years. How have the last 5 years been? I'm not happy with this and this thing. And then you're going to use that reflection time to think about, well, how would I like it? And then we start the circle again. Okay, you're going to visualize, you're going to become aware. At that stage, you become aware that you need to make a change, and off we go again. But equally, it might come at the end of something, it might come at the beginning. But that's why it's a cycle. So anyway, I hope that tool is useful for you in some way. what follows after that then is just, you know, a little bit of space for you to look at the cycle, think about your vision, and write a bit about where you think you currently are and why. You know, are you at the planning stage, or are you simply hovering around being aware, but you've not really made a decision and you're not quite willing? Yeah. I actually think that willingness and decision making comes at different points around the cycle, because, you know, particularly around after intention, between intention and action, you also have to become willing to take the action, all right? And you have to make a decision that you're going to do it. You might have to make a decision on the day that you're going to do it. That's quite helpful. You have to set yourself, you know, some kind of deadline so you actually hold yourself to that promise. And accountability is really, really important, and we'll come back to that later. But you're going to look at where you are. You're going to have a little think about why you think you're where you're at that particular stage. Then you're going to think about how committed are you. And again, that's going back to that relates to the willingness and the decision. Are you really committed to this? Have you absolutely made a decision? Have you cut off everything else? Have you decided that's absolutely what you're going to do? And are you going to make your way around the cycle? And if you have identified where you are, and you don't have to do these exercises if you don't want to, but they're there for you to utilize if you think it might be helpful to you. What's your next stage? You know, if you've become aware, you've made a decision, you know, okay, you know that you've got to deal with it. That's your taking responsibility, your ownership. Now, next stage is, okay, well, I haven't really done anything about it, so I need to make a plan. So I'm at the intention stage. And then you can start to make notes about, well, if I'm at the intention stage, what do I need to do that stage and then move on to the next one, okay? And this one, you know, I don't know, thinking about the way that the question's worded, how is your story? So this is you going back and looking at your story. And like I said to you earlier on, often between intention and action is when those fears come up for us, or they come back. You know, you might have dealt with them maybe, but when you're actually at the point of taking action, that's the point of going, if I do this, I'm actually going to have to do it, you know. And often fear of success is a much bigger problem than the fear of failure, okay? Believe it or not. So how is your story? What's your self-talk like? So you're checking in with yourself again. So how is it measuring up up to the challenge? This is what I said. How is your story, or your, you know, which is basically your self-talk? How is it measuring up to the challenge at this stage? So whichever stage you're at, what are you telling yourself about it? You know, if you're sort of hovering around the awareness, the willingness, the decision stage, are you kind of going, oh, I don't know if I could be bothered really. If I make a decision, I'm going to have to do something, you know. Then maybe your self-talk is coming in, it's saying you're not really capable of doing it. Okay, in which case you're going to have to deal with that, because I believe that you are capable of doing it. If you really want it, of course, it might be that your vision's just not exciting for you. Yeah, it's not motivating you, in which case you might need a different one. You might need to have a break from it and come back to it and really evaluate what it is you want to do with your life. And maybe you start back at the evaluate and reflect, have a good think about the past few years of your life. Is it okay? Yeah, your life might be fine, in which case you don't need to do this at all. But, you know, because you're here, I'm thinking that you probably do want to do this, so that's fine. So you'll do that. And then, of course, you've got the story section where you're going to tell that story of how you got to where you are. And then the one of the last exercises is your one-page summary. And I haven't put much information on there, but I will explain it here. Basically, this is a page for you to literally note down in summary form each step. So you're going to put down in brief what your vision is, what your story is, that 3-step story, okay, how your needs are measuring up. You might just put a note of, well, I've got to work on this and this need. And your clear path is about the obstacles and the barriers that you need to overcome. So you might put on here, okay, in order to have a clear path, then I'm going to need to perhaps, I don't know, take an example from my own story. I need to get clear on perhaps how much my house is worth, so I know if I can sell up and move, for example. Or I need to, first thing I need to do is get some training in coaching, because that's what I need to do in order to become a coach, if that's my vision. Or actually the next thing I'm going to have to do is to get some help writing a business plan. And that's how you're going to clear your path. You're going to clear up those obstacles by noting down the things you're going to do to move them out of the way. And then you've got a little space there for you to write your actions, your immediate actions. Okay, so you've got a little list there you can put in. Then you've got your immediate next steps. And as I've said here, you might, this is literally, you've got to the end of everything else. And you might think, okay, well, I've done this booklet, I've done this planning. What are the next steps that I have to do? And it might be that you need to get some advice from somebody about something. It might be that you need to do a bit of research and find out some more information about something. It might be that you've decided that you really need to do some more work on perhaps clearing some trauma that's stuck in the system, that's appeared through there. And, I have a particular interest and expertise around helping people to resolve trauma. And it's more common than you might think, all right? It's much more common than you might think. Often when we do have those fears and those self-doubts, it's because there's a bit of trauma stuck in the system somewhere, and it's quite straightforward sometimes to resolve some of that or calm some of the trauma, all right? So yeah, you might need a bit of counselling. You might need a bit of coaching. You might need a bit of business coaching or business support. You might need to go and speak to a careers advisor or something like that. Obviously, if it's something that I can do, I'm happy for you to book in a free call with me. It's something that I offer. Maybe in that call, it will be just enough for you to move on to the next stage, and that's absolutely fine. It may be that there are some courses that you can take, or some more detailed one-to-one work that we can do, or else maybe I could refer you to somebody else who has more specialist experience in that particular thing that you need at that time. So it's entirely up to you, but my details will be at the end. And then you've got your checklist. And this is basically for you to go through and see what you've done, and then to make some notes. And I've just put an extra page here about goal setting. Sorry, there. And I haven't gone into much detail about what SMART goals are, but basically when you are setting goals, some of you might already know this. When you're setting goals, you need to make sure that they're specific. So you need to pinpoint exactly what it is. So this isn't about your vision. Your vision is your bird's eye view. It's your big picture. It's your whole story of where you want your life to be. Yeah, okay. But your goals are the kind of smaller things that you are going to do to get to that vision. So your goals need to be specific. That means you need to name it very, very clearly. It's got to be measurable, which means you've got to know when it's done. Okay, so for example, let's take weight loss. It's quite an easy one to do, as in it's easy to explain using the SMART method. So if it's specific, you're going to say, right, I want to lose 10 pounds, okay, in weight. That's specific, okay. However, it's not time bound yet, right? So we'll get there. Specific, I want to lose 10 pounds in weight. Is it measurable? Yes, because I know I will have achieved it when I have lost 10 pounds on the scales, yeah? Is it achievable? Well, is it achievable for me to do by tomorrow? No, yeah. Is it achievable for me to do by a certain time scale? Could I lose 10 pounds in 2 months, maybe? Yeah, that's achievable. Is it realistic? Is it something that I could do? When we say, is it realistic? Obviously, if you were going to say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds by tomorrow, that's not realistic at all. Okay. If you're going to say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in 3 months, then that is realistic. if you've got some particular issue going on in your life which is going to make it difficult for you, then maybe even two months isn't realistic. Maybe you'll need to make it 6 months, for example. Is it time bound? And that means you're going to give yourself a deadline. So if I'm going to do a weight loss goal using the SMART method, I'm going to say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in 2 months, and I'm going to do it in this way. Okay, so then I would start to make other goals, listing out the way that I'm going to actually do it. You know, it might be that I'm going to break it down into weekly steps. You know, I'm going to cut out all sugar, all processed foods. I'm going to plan my meals every Sunday, and I'm going to cook up some batches of food on Sunday. I'm going to take my my salad in a Tupperware to work. Yep, I'm going to only eat eggs for breakfast or something like that. So you can gradually hone down to make those little daily tasks very specific as well. So that's an additional goal setting page there. And then we have the what to do next page. All right, and you can read through that, and I've put some little links at the bottom so you can look at the different things that I do. And there are different videos on my website where I talk a little bit more about the different services that I have, because I can work with a whole range of people, and I can do that to fit in with your circumstances as well. These are difficult times, and I like to be able to accommodate everybody where I can. All right, well, I hope that you've enjoyed doing this. And I really hope that at some point we meet in the future, and I'd be overjoyed, really, really genuinely pleased to work with you. Okay, take care then.